I still regret is that Sean Astin didn't get nominated, because I think his performance, he's the heart of that film. You know, if Elijah's the soul, then Sean Astin's the heart of it, and I felt very upset for him that his acting wasn't acknowledged.
Sean Astin was the perfect Sam Gamgee, which is why it might come as a shock to you that prior to 1999, he had no idea who Tolkien was. For many Lord of the Rings fans, Sean carried the entire trilogy. But what's most surprising to those same fans is just how unique Sean Astin's journey to Middle-earth actually was. Ian McKellen and John Rhys-Davies cut their teeth on the London stage. Orlando Bloom got the role of Legolas fresh out of school. And Elijah Wood came from a working-class family in Iowa, becoming a child star through his mother's hard work and encouragement. But Sean? He was raised by Hollywood royalty. He grew up in the industry, raised by the great Patty Duke. He had 4 fathers. Yeah, you heard that right. One of whom had actually acted in a Peter Jackson movie before. And maybe craziest of all, Sean had never read The Lord of the Rings. Not only had he not read it, but he literally had no idea what it was. My name is Gibby, and welcome back to Fact or Fantasy, a place where we dive deep into the books and films and discuss all things Lord of the Rings and Tolkien. This is the 7th episode in my Becoming series, where we uncover the unbelievable true stories of how our favorite actors became their iconic fictional characters. Today, we're exploring Sean Astin's turbulent and triumphant path to the Shire. We'll look at the incredible physical toll the role took, the hidden financial paradox of acting in a multi-billion-dollar franchise, which actually cost him his house, and how his real-world dedication to the cast perfectly mirrored the loyalty of his character. So sit back, relax, grab a pint or some Old Toby, and enjoy this deep dive into Sean Astin's incredible journey to becoming Samwise the Brave. To truly appreciate the brilliant casting of Sean Astin as Middle-earth's most devoted gardener, we first have to examine his roots. Because unlike the classically trained British veterans who earned their stripes in London's prestigious theaters, Sean's upbringing was a complete departure from that path. He was born directly into the beating heart of the Hollywood studio system. Born in Santa Monica, California in 1971, Sean was the son of the legendary Patty Duke, an Academy Award-winning powerhouse and a true television icon of her era. But growing up under the glaring spotlight of a superstar parent is rarely a fairy tale. And Patty Duke's highly publicized, chaotic personal life meant that Sean's paternal lineage was a tabloid-fueled mystery for decades. In fact, his family tree is so wildly complex, it could easily be a movie script of its own. For the first 14 years of his life, Sean was raised by the actor John Astin, best known as Gomez Addams in the Addams Family, and Sean believed him to be his biological father. However, at age 14, his mother sat him down with a stunning revelation. His real father was actually Desi Arnaz Jr., the son of comedy legend Lucille Ball. Eager for connection, Sean spent the next decade building a loving bond with Arnaz. But in a mind-bending twist of fate in his mid-20s, a DNA test ultimately proved that his biological father was, in reality, a rock music producer named Michael Tell, a man who had been married to Patty Duke for a mere 13 days before Sean was even born. And then, once you add in his stepfather, Mike Pierce, you have an intricately tangled family dynamic. Yet, this is exactly where the true character of Sean Astin shines. A childhood like that could easily derail a young actor in Los Angeles, but instead of letting the media circus break him, Sean navigated it with a staggering level of emotional maturity. He fiercely refused to sever ties with any of the men who helped raise him, publicly embracing his incredibly unique situation by proudly stating that he could call any of them on the phone at any time, and he claimed that he had 4 dads. This highly scrutinized family history forced Sean to develop a remarkably resilient and empathetic worldview long before he ever applied his first pair of Hobbit prosthetics. And that deep-seated resilience translated perfectly to the silver screen. Sean wasn't just a kid born into the industry, he rapidly became a certified pop culture legend for an entire generation. At just 13 years old, he anchored the beloved 1985 adventure The Goonies as Mikey Walsh. 8 years later, he delivered a career-defining performance in the 1993 sports biopic Rudy. He absolutely mastered the archetype of the earnest and fiercely loyal dreamer who simply refuses to back down when the odds are stacked against him. However, despite this massive cultural footprint and even scoring an Academy Award nomination in 1995 for directing the live-action short film Kangaroo Court, by the late 90s, Sean's on-screen momentum had kind of stalled. The premier acting roles were drying up, leaving him facing a crossroads of professional uncertainty and financial vulnerability. He was desperate for a project that would creatively challenge him and put his name back on the map. The spark that ignited his next chapter came from a crucial piece of fatherly advice. His adoptive father, Sean Astin, had recently starred in a 1996 horror comedy called The Frighteners, directed by a quirky New Zealand filmmaker named Peter Jackson. John explicitly pulled Sean aside and gave him strict instructions. If he ever got the opportunity to work with Peter Jackson, he shouldn't hesitate for a single second. Sure enough, that exact opportunity presented itself in early 1999. But when the phone finally rang with the offer of a lifetime, Sean didn't immediately jump for joy, because he had absolutely no idea what his agent was talking about.
My agent called, Nikki Mirish. Darling, honey, you have to have a flawless British accent by Tuesday. So I was like, okay, yeah, of course. And I turned my car around, I went right to Barnes & Noble, and I said to the guy, do you know Tolkien? He goes, Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien? I'm like, that's the guy. And he goes, this is all Tolkien.
When Sean's agent, Nikki Mirish, called him to pitch a massive multi-film adaptation of The Lord of the Rings, the actor's brain immediately scrambled the high fantasy titles. Having never read Tolkien's Legendarium before, Sean genuinely thought she was offering him a part in an adaptation of the children's book The Phantom Tollbooth. After a quick and slightly embarrassing correction, with his agent clarifying that it was actually the legendary sequel to The Hobbit, she dropped the real bombshell. Peter Jackson was casting, and Sean needed to master a flawless British accent by Tuesday. Refusing to squander the opportunity that his father had warned him to look out for, Sean immediately jumped into action. He drove straight to a local Barnes & Noble and bought the books. Specifically, he sought out the Alan Lee illustrated editions because the watercolor artwork felt grounded, gritty, and historically real, the exact same visual tone Peter Jackson was aiming for. As he rapidly devoured the text, he initially struggled to grasp the dense mythology of Sauron, the sweeping battles, and the frequent descriptions of portly, crying hobbits. But this is where Sean's robust academic background became his secret weapon. Relying on his literature degree that he had earned from UCLA, he bypassed the fantasy tropes and latched onto the thematic core of Samwise. He deeply connected with Sam's identity as a gardener, understanding that a return to the soil and the preservation of the natural world was the ultimate goal of the entire quest. He wasn't just a sidekick, Sam was the moral anchor. With the emotional core locked in, he just needed the voice. After calling his wife Christine to let her know about the potential role, she immediately flipped through the Hollywood trade magazines to hire him a dialect coach, ensuring that Sean could nail the refined rural English accent required for his initial audition tape, which featured the terrifying sequence in Shelob's lair. With everything now seemingly in order, he went off to audition at the office of Victoria Burrows, and maybe some could say that this is where Sean had a leg up on the competition. You see, Victoria Burrows knew Sean's parents, and had even said for years that she wanted to find Sean the perfect role. Plus, she had previously gotten Sean's father the role in The Frighteners with Peter Jackson. Although the final decision definitely wasn't up to her, it alleviated a lot of Sean's stress to know that he had a friend on the inside. And on top of this, Peter Jackson and Fran Walsh had actually called Sean personally many years prior to praise him for his incredible work in Rudy. So between knowing the casting director personally and having been on Peter Jackson's radar in years past, Sean went in with all sorts of confidence. But even with a great audition under his belt, Sean faced a massive, undeniable physical hurdle. Peter Jackson had a very strict visual mandate for the Shire. Hobbits, specifically Sam, needed to be portly, stocky, and thoroughly grounded in their love of food and ale. The problem? Sean was in peak physical condition. He had literally just run the LA Marathon and was walking around at a lean 175. He simply didn't look like a hobbit. When he caught wind through the industry grapevine that his primary competition for the role was a, quote, fat guy in London, Sean realized that he had to take some drastic measures. Demonstrating that unrelenting, Rudy-level determination, he wrote a direct letter to the production team. He promised them that if they gave him the part, he would do whatever it took to visually embody the character, vowing to eat like a pig. And he definitely followed through on that promise, intentionally packing on nearly 40 pounds of extra weight to shed his Hollywood leading man physique and transform into the stout rustic gardener that Jackson was looking for. After securing an in-person callback with Jackson and Fran Walsh in LA, where he wholly committed to projecting a deep seriousness of purpose, the agonizing wait began. The ultimate confirmation happened much later while Sean was sitting in his office. His phone rang, and when he picked up, he heard the voices of 2 different agents on the line. In the ruthless world of Hollywood representation, this is the ultimate tell. A call from one agent usually means bad news, but a call from 2 agents means it's a massive, life-changing victory, and they both want to take credit for it. Before he could even say hello, his agent Mark Schwartz started screaming, "You got it!" Overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the moment, Sean dropped to his knees right there in the office and started crying, thanking God for the monumental opportunity. He had won the role of a lifetime, but the true leap of faith was just beginning. Unlike the young, single actors in the cast who could easily pack a single duffel bag and head off to New Zealand, Sean was 28 years old with a wife and a daughter. He had to completely uproot his family, moving them thousands of miles away to New Zealand for an unprecedented, grueling 18-month independent film shoot that had absolutely zero guarantee of success. And as he would soon discover, gaining 40 pounds and flying across the globe was the easiest part of the job. Because once he touched down in Wellington, the true physical, logistical, and psychological torture of Middle-earth was waiting for him. The daily reality of transforming into Samwise Gamgee began in the freezing darkness of 5 a.m. Long before the cameras ever rolled, Sean was subjected to the punishing routine of having cold, oversized rubber prosthetic feet meticulously glued to his own. And in a hilarious, almost unbelievable twist of irony, the primary makeup artist assigned to apply these prosthetics every single morning was a man literally named Sean Foot. But that humor quickly wore off. The sheer inefficiency of the process was maddening to Sean. And this is the part where if you know anything about Sean Astin as a person, the next thing that I'm gonna say will make total sense to you. It's one of those quirks that your friends chuckle at you for, and trust me, the other Hobbits definitely did. Sean kept track of the production schedule, and he did the math on how many shooting days they had where the feet never got shown on camera. And he came to the conclusion that there were roughly 50 separate agonizing shooting days where he endured the hours-long prosthetics process only for the camera framing to never actually feature his feet in the shot. And keep that in mind because this is a great example of why his personality type is so perfect for the position that he holds today. But anyway, the frustrating makeup chair was nothing compared to the intense physical dangers of the practical sets. At least according to Sean. His tenure in Middle-earth was marked by a series of brutal occupational hazards. While filming interior dialogue scenes in the intricately crafted Rivendell set, a massive wooden elven loom lost its balance somehow and collapsed directly onto Sean's head. The impact knocked him completely unconscious on the studio floor, forcing the crew to rush him to a local hospital. And according to him, the swelling on his head was so pronounced that it actually pushed his tightly fitted Hobbit wig upward, forcing the makeup department to hastily adjust his prosthetics just to hide the injury. During another sequence for the Two Towers, Andy Serkis accidentally pulled a little too hard on Sean's cloak during a stunt, ripping his glued-on wig clean off his scalp and violently snapping his head backwards. That was one of the few days where Sean actually stormed off the set, because if he stayed there any longer, he might have strangled someone. It's definitely a story that Andy and Sean laugh about now when they're at conferences together, but back then, I'm sure it would have been pretty infuriating. However, the absolute worst injury for him occurred during the emotional climax of The Fellowship of the Ring. While filming a scene in the Anduin River, Sean had to sprint barefoot into the freezing water to stop Frodo from leaving in an elven boat. Because the scene required him to run into a natural body of water in his rubber prosthetics, the production deployed a scuba team to search through the riverbed and clear out anything sharp. And they gave the all clear. But as Sean sprinted into the water at full speed, he stepped directly onto a massive, jagged shard of glass that was pointing straight up. It pierced cleanly through the thick rubber prosthetic and went deep into the bottom of his actual foot. The blood loss was pretty significant, and the remote location was over an hour and a half away from the nearest hospital, so he had to be taken away in a helicopter. Yet, demonstrating a level of rugged resilience that would make Samwise proud, Sean received 20 stitches and returned to the freezing water to resume filming a mere 24 hours later. But surviving the physical gauntlet was only half of the battle. Socially, Sean occupied a completely different demographic space than his castmates. While Elijah Wood, Dominic Monaghan, and Billy Boyd were largely unattached and eager to experience the wild, late-night clubbing lifestyle of young actors abroad, Sean was the old married guy. He deliberately opted out of the bar hopping and transformed his rented home into a quiet domestic sanctuary for the cast. He even hosted a massive Thanksgiving dinner with Elijah Wood. This separation naturally pushed Sean to channel all of his energy into a unique psychological exercise. He engaged in what he called method caretaking. He decided that his primary identity off-screen would be to protect the 18-year-old Elijah Wood, mirroring Sam's fierce devotion to Frodo. This protective instinct manifested in extreme ways. When Elijah repeatedly locked his keys inside of his Wellington apartment, Sean refused to let the younger actor deal with the stress. Instead, Sean would instruct Elijah to go have fun while he covertly hired a local locksmith, oversaw the breaching of the apartment, retrieved the keys, and personally ran them across town to deliver them 45 minutes later. He wanted to ensure that Elijah never had to worry about the real-world stressors so he could maintain the unburdened innocence required to play the ring bearer. But beyond this dedication to the Lord of the Rings, Sean was also constantly buzzing with his own creative energy. Right in the middle of the grueling pickup shots, he managed to convince the exhausted cast and crew to give up their only Sunday off to help him direct an independent short film called The Long and Short of It. He even wrangled Peter Jackson into making a cameo as a grumpy bus driver. For what it was a decent success, eventually premiering at the prestigious Sundance Film Festival, and proving that his relentless drive couldn't be contained to just acting. Sean gave absolutely everything to the role of Samwise Gamgee. His blood, his sweat, and his unyielding emotional devotion. But as the production finally wrapped and prepared to shatter global box office records, Sean was about to face a harsh, deeply stressful reality. Because playing the greatest hero in cinematic history didn't make him a millionaire, it nearly bankrupted him. When The Return of the King swept the Academy Awards and the trilogy cemented itself as a $3 billion global juggernaut, you'd naturally assume that the actors at the center of it were set for life. But the reality for Sean Astin was a staggering, almost unbelievable financial paradox. Because New Line Cinema shot all three films at once, a massive, unprecedented gamble at the time, the cast signed single contracts with modest upfront salaries and absolutely zero back-end box office residuals. Sean was paid a flat fee of just $250,000 for the entire 18-month shoot. And while that seems like a lot, it only boils down to roughly $75,000 per movie. The math was so catastrophically bad for his financial situation back in the States that he and his family were literally forced to sell their home just to escape a massive mortgage, all while actively starring in the biggest film franchise on the planet. Adding to this immense stress was the political reality of the shoot. The entire massive production in New Zealand was non-union, which weighed heavily on Sean's conscience. His mother, the great Patty Duke, was a fierce labor advocate and a former president of the Screen Actors Guild. The guilt of working a non-union gig while his mother fought so hard for actor protections haunted him. But beautifully, that deep-seated realization of labor exploitation planted a seed that would change his life. He went on to earn a master's degree in public administration, and decades later, in the fall of 2025, Sean Astin brought it all full circle when he was elected as the national president of SAG-AFTRA, taking up the exact same mantle that his mother held years before. But that's jumping ahead. To rewind a little bit to the early 2000s, that intense anxiety and professional frustration had to go somewhere. In 2004, Sean released a highly controversial memoir titled There and Back Again. Instead of a sanitized, PR-friendly victory lap for the movies, he laid bare his rawest insecurities. He aired grievances about script changes, admitted to intense jealousy regarding his co-star's screen time, and even publicly complained that Peter Jackson chose the wrong takes for his acting scenes. But that is the ultimate beautiful paradox of Sean Astin's time in Middle-earth. In some ways, the man was falling apart behind the scenes. He was broke, exhausted, bleeding, and fighting off crippling self-doubt. But when the cameras rolled, he funneled every single ounce of that profound personal struggle into the most pure, hopeful, and deeply empathetic performance in fantasy cinema. In his personal letters, J.R.R. Tolkien explicitly referred to Samwise Gamgee as the chief hero of the story, a character directly inspired by the brave, unwavering British privates he fought alongside in the trenches of World War I. And no matter what you think of Sean Astin's life off-screen, there's no denying that he perfectly brought Tolkien's vision to life. He proved that true heroism isn't about wielding a glowing sword or claiming a crown, it's about the quiet, unyielding strength to carry your friend when they can't take another step. So what do you think about Sean's incredible journey to Middle-earth? And who should I cover next in this series? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed this deep dive, then drop a like and subscribe, as that greatly helps the channel. I want to give a massive shout out to Joshua, Timothy, RoboSteve, Drix, Andy, Maha, and the rest of my incredible Patreon and YouTube members who help make these videos possible. As always, don't forget that you matter and Jesus loves you. I'll see you guys in the next video.